Right now, somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, a warship that costs more than $5 billion is cutting through the water. It looks like something out of a science fiction film. Angular, low profile, almost invisible to radar. It is called the USS Zumwalt, and it represents the most expensive, most ambitious surface warship the United States Navy has ever built. 3 of them exist. Just 3. And even before the third one was fully delivered, defense analysts, retired admirals, and Pentagon planners were all quietly arriving at the same uncomfortable conclusion. The ship that was supposed to define American naval power for the next 30 years was already being outpaced by the threats it was built to defeat. This is not a story about a bad weapon. The Zumwalt is an extraordinary engineering achievement. This is a story about something harder to fix, about how the speed of modern warfare technology has broken the traditional logic of building massive, expensive platforms, and about what happens when the world's most powerful navy finds itself holding a $15 billion collection of ships designed for a threat environment that no longer looks the way anyone expected. If you want to understand the real story behind the world's most powerful military systems, stories that go deeper than headlines, subscribe to Navy Reality right now. This is exactly the kind of breakdown we do here. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to the late 1990s, when the Navy was drawing up the blueprint for what it called the DD-21 program. The Cold War was over. American naval power was essentially unchallenged. The thinking at the time was built around a specific vision of future conflict, a conflict where the United States would need to project power from the sea directly onto land. The scenario was called littoral warfare, shallow coastal waters, amphibious operations. Marines landing on hostile beaches while ships offshore hammered enemy defenses. The Zumwalt class was designed as the perfect answer to that problem. It would carry an entirely new gun system, the Advanced Gun System, capable of firing GPS-guided rocket-propelled shells more than 60 miles inland with extraordinary precision. It would be stealthy enough to operate close to hostile coastlines without being detected by shore-based radars. It would carry next-generation electronics, a revolutionary power architecture, and an integrated electric propulsion system that could eventually power directed energy weapons. Lasers, railguns, technologies that were still years away but already on the drawing board. On paper, it was the ship that would make every other surface combatant in the world obsolete. The problem was the ammunition. Before we go further, what did you think when you heard that? A $5 billion warship, and the problem was bullets. Drop your reaction in the comments right now, and keep watching because it gets worse. The guided shells for the Advanced Gun System, the rounds that gave the ship its entire coastal bombardment purpose, cost approximately $800,000 each per shell. When the program was originally designed, the Navy planned to buy 32 ships. At that scale, the ammunition would have been produced in large enough quantities to bring the cost down. But then budget pressures hit. The program was cut to 24 ships, then to 7, then to 3, and as the order quantity collapsed, the ammunition unit cost exploded. By the time the Navy calculated what it would actually cost to operate the gun system on just 3 ships, the number was so absurd, approaching $1 million per round, that the service did something almost unthinkable. It canceled the ammunition program entirely. The most advanced naval gun ever installed on an American warship was rendered useless. The Advanced Gun System still sits aboard all 3 Zumwalt-class destroyers today. It has never fired a shot in anger. It will almost certainly never fire one. And here is where the story becomes more than just a procurement failure. Because the Advanced Gun System problem was not an isolated mistake, it exposed a deeper structural tension in how large, complex, multi-decade weapons platforms get built, and how rapidly the threat environment can shift beneath them. When the Zumwalt was conceived, China's Navy consisted primarily of older Soviet-era designs and domestically built frigates that were not considered pure threats. The South China Sea was not the contested flashpoint it is today. Anti-ship missile technology was available but not widely proliferated. The idea of fighting a high-end naval war against a technologically sophisticated adversary in the open ocean was considered a secondary concern. The primary scenario was the littoral one, projecting power from the sea. Fast forward to the present, China's People's Liberation Army Navy has become the largest navy in the world by ship count. It has deployed carrier strike groups, nuclear submarines, and, most critically, a generation of anti-ship ballistic missiles that can strike surface targets at ranges exceeding 1,000 miles. The DF-21D and the DF-26 are designed explicitly to destroy aircraft carriers and large surface combatants. They travel at hypersonic speeds. They maneuver during terminal approach. They are guided by a network of satellites, over-the-horizon radars, and reconnaissance assets that together constitute what defense analysts call a kill chain, a connected system that can find a ship, track it, target it, and strike it faster than a ship can respond. These missiles cost somewhere between $1 and $3 million per unit. The ships they are designed to destroy cost $5 billion. The math of that exchange ratio is where the Zumwalt's obsolescence begins to crystallize. Surface warships in the modern era face what some strategists call the salvo competition problem. A missile costs a fraction of the platform it targets. If an adversary can build and field anti-ship missiles faster than the United States can build and field ships, the adversary holds an asymmetric advantage, not because their ships are better, but because the cost equation favors them. For the Zumwalt specifically, the ship was designed for close coastal operations. It was not designed as a primary combatant in a high-end open ocean fight against an adversary with long-range anti-ship missiles. It lacks the vertical launch cells, the missile tubes that arm a ship for air defense and offensive strike that would make it competitive in that environment. The standard Arleigh Burke destroyer carries 96 vertical launch cells. The Zumwalt carries 80, and a significant portion of those are taken up by systems other than weapons. Now, to be fair, the Navy recognized this problem and began a redesign program. The plan was to remove the useless advanced gun system from all free Zumwalt-class ships and replace it with a new capability, a hypersonic missile called the Conventional Prompt Strike Weapon. This is a genuine strategic weapon. It can hit targets more than 700 miles away within minutes. It travels at speeds above Mach 5. It is designed specifically to threaten high-value, time-sensitive targets, enemy command centers, air defense networks, ship concentrations, in scenarios where aircraft or conventional cruise missiles could not reach fast enough or survive long enough to do the job. On paper, converting the Zumwalts into hypersonic missile carriers sounds like a logical adaptation. 3 stealthy ships, capable of approaching close enough to enemy coastlines to fire missiles that compress reaction time to almost zero. But geography is stubborn, and the physics of the engagement problem do not entirely cooperate with the solution. The conventional prompt strike missile is large. Each Zumwalt can carry only a limited number of them. Estimates suggest somewhere between 12 and perhaps 28 rounds total per ship, depending on the final configuration. In a major high-end conflict, a ship with 12 to 28 precision hypersonic shots is not a decisive weapons magazine. It is a first strike capability, useful, potentially war-shaping in the opening hours, but not a sustained platform for the kind of extended maritime campaign that a conflict with China or Russia might demand. And the ships themselves remain expensive to operate, with crews of just 148 sailors managing systems of extraordinary complexity. Maintenance costs are high. Availability rates have been a persistent challenge throughout the program's history. There is also the question of survivability. The Zumwalt's stealth characteristics are real and meaningful against certain radar bands used by shore-based systems. But modern naval targeting increasingly relies on non-radar sensors, satellite imagery, electronic intelligence gathering, acoustic detection, and network sensor fusion that can locate a ship through multiple overlapping methods simultaneously. Stealth reduces detection probability. It does not eliminate it, and a ship that costs $5 billion cannot afford to get hit once. This is the deeper truth that the Zumwalt story reveals, and it extends well beyond any single weapons program. The United States has spent the last 3 decades building its military power around platforms, large, expensive, exquisitely capable systems that represent enormous concentrations of capability in a single hull or airframe. Aircraft carriers, stealth destroyers, the F-35. The logic behind platforms was sound in a world where the United States held a massive technology advantage over every potential adversary. When you were the only one with advanced precision guidance, stealth, and network-enabled warfare systems, concentrating capability in expensive platforms makes strategic sense. You spend more, but your adversaries cannot match you. That world has changed. The technology diffusion of the last 20 years has been extraordinary. Precision guidance is now cheap. Satellite imagery is commercially available. Anti-ship missiles with ranges measured in hundreds of kilometers have been proliferated across China, Russia, Iran, and non-state actors. The cost of threatening an expensive platform has dropped dramatically. The cost of building one has not. The response that many defense analysts now argue for is a fundamental shift in architecture, away from a small number of extremely expensive, extremely capable surface platforms, and toward a distributed force of many smaller, cheaper, individually expendable ships that together present a target-rich problem for adversaries, rather than a concentrated high-value aim point. The Navy calls this concept distributed maritime operations, unmanned surface vessels, small, fast, missile-armed corvettes, submarines operating in coordinated wolfpack formations, a force that cannot be defeated by finding and destroying one $5 billion ship because the capability is spread across dozens or hundreds of smaller nodes. The problem is transition. The United States cannot simply stop building aircraft carriers and destroyers tomorrow. It has treaty obligations, alliance commitments, and forward-deployed forces that depend on the ships that currently exist. The shipbuilding industrial base is configured for large platform construction. Retooling it takes years. And in the gap between the platform-centric force of today and the distributed, disaggregated force of tomorrow, the Zumwalt class sits 3 ships, extraordinary technology, a canceled gun, a promising hypersonic missile, and a set of design choices made for a threat environment that arrived and then changed before the ships were even commissioned. What the Zumwalt ultimately represents is not incompetence. The engineers who built it were among the most talented naval architects in the world. The technologies it pioneered, the integrated power system, the tumble-home hull design, the advanced radar systems, will inform American naval design for decades. What it represents is something harder to engineer around: the lag time between decision and deployment. When the Navy began designing the Zumwalt in the late 1990s, it was solving the right problem for 1999. By the time the ship entered service in 2016, the problem had moved. And in a world where hypersonic missiles, drones, swarms, autonomous undersea vehicles, and artificial intelligence-enabled targeting systems are all developing on timescales measured in years rather than decades, a weapons platform that takes 15 to 20 years from concept to delivery will always carry the risk of being optimized for yesterday's war. The risk, in the end, was not in the engineering. The risk was in the assumption that the threat would wait. And the world does not wait.